Hello, Summerana members. I am Jillian Varney, and I am here with my very good friend, Holly Lund. Tonight, I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Holly Lund. I am a fine art children's photographer based out of New Jersey, and I am one of your Summer on It instructors.
Holly and I are going to be discussing a really fun subject that is super important in our genre, and that is finding inspiration, which if you have followed any of Holly's work, no doubt you can see that she puts so much thought and consideration into her inspiration, and those details, Holly, chef's kiss. So they really are, though. You are one of the most detailed fine art editors that I personally am so grateful to know, and I really love all of your images that you create. And I know that we've discussed a little bit about this before, but I would love for you to start off by sharing with our community where you find your inspiration, what's most influential in your work.
Yeah, so a lot of my inspiration just kind of comes from my own personal background. So when I first went to college, let's start there. I started off as a business major. I had originally wanted to go for dance. I had danced my entire life, so I've always been a creative. I've always had some sort of outlet. My niece had other plans, so I was like, let's do something like smart. So I studied business, and then I had my quarter life crisis epiphany of I hate this and I don't want to do this the rest of my life. So I ended up studying history. I've always loved history. It's like just come naturally to me. I'm fascinated by it. And throughout that, I found that I loved art history as well. So I did a big focus on women artists throughout history, and then also female representations in art, mainly Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, up through the 19th century. So you'll see in a lot of my single subject portraits that they're very reminiscent of 18th and 19th century portraiture, especially the lighting. That's where I draw a lot of the lighting from. But then I also draw just from everyday life as well. So if you've seen some of my work with wigs, believe it or not, I actually got that idea from watching RuPaul's Drag Race because I love drag queens. I wish I was a drag queen. So, I was just sitting there watching an episode one day and I was like, oh man, their wigs are so fabulous. I'm like, guys, look at my hair. I have like no hair. This is all of my hair. It's really, really thin. And their hair is like out here and fabulous, right, voluminous. And
which, fun fact, they did wear wigs also.
Oh my gosh, they are just hair envy. And I was just like, let me just go check out like the wig selection on Amazon. And I ordered a bunch, and that's how that started. So just
like a slippery slope. When you get into a niche, I think we can all agree that all of a sudden you go from like 0 to 100 really fast in these things. I like you also get into something and I go head first into it.
It's like obsessive. Yes. But then I also draw from my mental health journey as well. A couple of years ago now, I wrote an article for Summer on a magazine about how I deal with my anxiety and my depression and how I channel that into my work. So I've had a number of pieces where I've just been, it's just for me, it's how I express or get through an episode or a mood. And I've actually even worked with some kids that have anxiety and depressive episodes and, kind of it's like therapy for them as well as for me. So it's just.
That is important too, that we do find, I would challenge anyone to say different, that being an artist is not something that we do partially for ourselves, and definitely plays into our mental health all the time. And I do think that it needs to be therapeutic. And I think that's why most of us do create art for a living, is very much for a therapeutic purpose. I know that I feel grateful every single day to be able to do something like this and actually make a living and a career out of it, because I like you also started out in the business world and cannot fathom living in that just like genre for the rest of my life. I'm appreciative to the experience that I have from that, but I just can't imagine if almost a decade ago now I had not. And I literally, kind of like you're talking, Holly, I remember waking up and being one morning being like, no, this is what I'm going to do. Something in my gut is telling me this is what I should be doing. And it's been a journey ever since, and a great one. So whoever, ancestors, thank you for guiding me.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of tapping into your everyday things too. It doesn't have to be this big, gigantic thing. Like, you know, for me, where it came from, I have this passion for art history and I studied it and I wrote a thesis about it. And, you know, I have a specific project in mind, which if you'd like, we can get into. But it really is just those like little everyday things that you might otherwise overlook. But just kind of, even if you just keep a little notepad around, be like, oh, that might be cool. Let it sit. You don't have to do it tomorrow. I mean, I have a project that, you know, I wanted to do. I thought about it 3 years ago. And over the summer, I just started it. So.
And it is funny how you'll have things sit on the back burner for so long, and then all of a sudden you're like, nope, I'm doing this now. I actually read my original statement that I wrote for Summerata. I think it was probably 3 years ago now. I just read that again today, and what you're saying is so relatable to me, because I wrote in there, one of the questions is, where do you find your inspiration? And I quote myself to saying, sometimes I'll look at a fallen tree. and that'll spark like a whole thing. And that is absolutely true with me personally. I'm like, it could be the silliest one little thing that I see that just like explodes into this idea, and I run with it. And I think that that's the best part about being an artist, is that you can do whatever you want, and you can take whatever you want as inspiration and go with it.
Totally.
I feel like we should be wearing like fun hats or something for this one. So today, though, we will be taking live questions and giving you answers. So if you have any questions for the fantastic Holly Lund about your inspiration, oh, yes.
This is your headpiece, Jillian.
I was just going to say, I'm like, that looks familiar. I cannot wait to use that. Holly has started dabbling because most of us artists can't help but going into different buckets, but she started this way. Creating these fabulous headpieces, and that one's for me, and I'm so excited to utilize it.
First of all, it's double-sided. Let's talk about that. It's double-sided.
Wait, go back the other side.
And it moves. So you can switch it to the...
It's fancy. Speaking of finding inspiration, here we go.
Exactly. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not in the mood for photography, but I needed to create something. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just get that feeling of like, oh, I need to do something with my hands.
Yes.
So
yep. What is it? Idle mind, idle hands.
Something like
What's that saying about those?
I know.
My hands are never idle. I am going 1,000,000 miles a minute, always. But yeah, so if anybody does have questions for us today, or you would like to share where you find your inspiration, discuss it with us, we would love to hear from you. So do feel free to give us a comment, and we're happy to discuss that with you. I know that Holly and I both share a very big love for the Tudor era as well. I know we've discussed this before. It's my secret passion. I don't utilize it in my work quite the same way Holly does, though. You're just so fantastic about that. And when you're describing what influences your lighting in your portraits, it absolutely shows exactly that. You really, really know how to grab emotions and set a mood with the way you light and style your sessions. And that's so admirable. I think we can all agree that that's just like such a fun, wonderful thing about your work, Holly.
Thank you. And I can hear all of the minds right now being like, well, how do I do that if I don't know how to do the light? Play with it till you figure it out. There's really no right or wrong. You know, my lighting style, I did not look up how do I recreate studio light for 19th century portraiture. No, it happened because I liked those images. I fiddled around with my lighting, And then I was like, oh, there it is. That's it. Okay, let's take a
That
step
moment that you nail it finally.
set up. And, you know, and that's just, now it's my go-to.
Right. Right. I mean, and I believe they say it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. So that's when I just had this conversation with a newer photographer this afternoon about like not getting hard on yourself when you are learning those new things. And we all first walked into studio lighting overwhelmed, because it can be overwhelming because there's a million different ways to use your lighting. And just because one photographer uses it one way doesn't mean another way is wrong necessarily. It's really how you use it to fit your style, your aesthetic, and what result you're looking for. And that just, you could use it so differently. And I agree with Holly. The best way to do that is to just get into the studio, keep playing around with it, keep moving it around, see what creates that effect that you're going for, and then go from there, because it'll become muscle memory. I really do believe in muscle memory.
Yeah, definitely. So Jillian, what do you do when you feel like you're in a creative funk, like and you don't really have inspiration?
That that happens a lot, actually. Like I think that by November every year, that's me. By November, I am so fried from the sessions over the summer and fall. Just that holiday rush. It really burns me out and drains me. So I like to call them passion projects, and I do at least one every single winter. I just finished up mine. I just finished my own self-portrait with it too this afternoon. I've been working on my own portrait for I think 3 days on and off now. I find that those are very healing to my soul and therapeutic for me to create those. And a lot of those, again, I could be scrolling on Facebook and see another artist's image, and I never once go, oh, I want to make that exact image. But something I see in that, I'm like, oh my God, that just gave me the best idea. This is what I want to do. And that's exactly what happened with this set. I saw another person post this beautiful monochrome set that they did. And it was just so beautiful. I love the way they did it. And I thought instantly, like, I want to make that, but Hollywood. Like I thought, like vintage Hollywood glam. That's what I want to do with mine. I want to do this. I already knew right away. I had somebody in mind. I'm like, oh yeah, Jamie. She has red hair down to her hips. She's it for me. Like I already knew, like everything in an instant was in my mind. And now the execution of that, on the other hand, there was a moment that I was sitting on my studio floor going, oh man, I hope I didn't waste hundreds of dollars on this set, because I'm really afraid. It was a challenge. I pushed myself out of my creative box of doing a monochromatic set, because the idea of like, yeah, you could look up like, you know, all the color palettes on Pinterest or wherever, but you can't walk into Home Depot and be like, match all these colors perfectly for me in fabrics and paint. And no, so it's a lot of digging. It was definitely one of the more challenging sets I've ever made, but I'm so glad I did do it, because at the end of the day, it did come together. And I was like, ooh. That was probably the most nerve-wracking set I've ever created, though, and I'm so happy I did it. But that's how I tend to get out of those funks. I also like to talk to my artist friends, just like you, Holly. I know that I love talking to ideas with you, or sharing images with you, and other of my friends as well, because sometimes one way we look at it is totally different than how another person will look at it. And I think that having those unbiased opinions and sometimes criticism, even though it's hard to take, it does help you grow. Those things are really important to get out of your artistic funks, because it can be really hard to get out of them. And lastly, sorry, this is a very long-winded response. Lastly, to avoid continuously getting into those ruts, I think that it's because I'm burning myself out. And as many of us know, and you've heard me say before, I believe the statistic is 80% of all photographers go out of business by year 5, which is a huge number. So majority do. And that to me goes, I knew at year 5, I was starting to burn out. I'm going on year 7, and I quadrupled my pricing, because I don't want to burn out and I don't want to lose my passion, and I'm losing my passion. And now I've taken the, appropriate steps to rectify that. So moving forward, I can still find my inspiration, get inspired, and it'll reflect in my work at long run. I know it will.
Excellent.
Yes, that was a very long answer. I'm sorry, guys. Like I had a whole lot to say about that.
Projects.
Yeah, passion projects was the short answer.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that you touched on was just like talking with your artist friends too, because they might not be even fully on board with your idea or completely understand it, but they might offer just a different perspective or
Yeah.
say one thing that then like flips a switch for you. Be like, oh, all right, well, what if I do that? It's almost sort of akin to like a brainstorming session. But just
It
getting,
is like that because we
yeah,
don't have cooler talk. Most of us don't.
no.
Some of us do. Most of us are just out, on our own. So I do think that that's really important to have like some type of support in our business, because if not, like we do miss out on that cooler talk. And
That's why I miss Clubhouse.
yeah, it was nice for that. I will admit that is what made me love Clubhouse initially, is that all of a sudden we're connecting. And I will say to this day, I have made so many friends through Clubhouse that now, like, I wouldn't have known had we not started doing these chats. If you're not familiar, Talk Tuesday did stem from Clubhouse first, guys. That is where we first created this fun. Now you get to see our beautiful faces too.
But I
Sorry.
think, yeah, and I mean, this really does tie into the topic of inspiration, but just making sure that, yeah, we don't have coworkers. We don't have, going over to the water cooler and chatting about the weekend or whatnot. So it is important to really sort of put yourself out there and find fellow artists friends who, quote unquote, get it.
Yeah.
So whatever way that you find the means to do that, whether it's online in your local community, I think there's a really strong benefit there for inspiration. You'll find your people.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that locally, one of my friends actually just started inviting other local photographers to a weekly coffee date. And we've even discussed like studio hopping to go. I mean, not only just in your work though, but sometimes just seeing studio layouts is hugely inspirational to going, oh my gosh, I didn't consider organizing my wardrobe this way. That was genius. I would have never thought about that. So I feel like you can find so much inspiration, not in just like how you're going to make your sessions work, by being around other artists. And I think that that's really great. And many times too, I have my main studio, but I am also part of a historic landmark. It's a mansion that was built in 1865. And the thing that drew me to that initially though, is that it is just a huge meeting place for artists. They have, I think it's such like we are such like a collection of artists. They have musicians, they have painters, they have photographers, they have quilters. Like, I mean, like you name it, they've been there. And now I love that they're letting people who teach yoga in there. They're letting hair and makeup artists in there. And it's like, which should have just, I mean, the title is kind of indicative to art. So you would have thought that they would have always been welcome, but it's just such a huge collaboration of artists. And I definitely have connected with so many different, not even, there is a mind reader there that has become one of like his name is Joe Diamond. You guys should look him up. Joe Diamond Live. He's like fantastic. But I mean, we've become friends. We've worked on like fun projects together. So just even finding other artists, not necessarily photographers, can hugely help you. And Holly, I wanted to tell you, we actually are getting some comments. They are not registering for us here tonight for some reason, but we did like have some people say hello to us. So Rita Walters wanted to say that she thinks that it's important that we're pushing out of our comfort zone, and it's the best. And I could not agree more. Like I was just talking on that this last set that I did was the most difficult I've ever done, and it definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and I'm appreciative to that. So
Agreed.
Miranda, thank you. We also think you are fabulous. Thank you for inflating our egos tonight. So she wins. But she also wanted to say thank you for that tip with the light, Holly. And then she went on to say that when she gets into a funk, that changing things up and doing something different, not necessarily even in photography, but just being creative in different ways will kind of help those creative ideas come back. Work on your website, craft a crown or floral headband, right? Do sewing, which I also definitely bought a sewing machine and serger last year. I have problems. And just so you know, it'll come back when you're taking pictures, and the best ideas come after a mental break. And I can't agree with that more. It is so important that we give ourselves mental breaks. Like, no matter what career line you're in, I do think that we need to appreciate mental health in the entire world, not just our country, because it's very important to all of us, and to keep your creative juices flowing.
100%. The other thing too I wanted to mention about like just kind of changing things up, change up your routine a little bit also. And then I'm all about, the feng shui. So I rearrange my rooms all the time. All the time.
That's also a huge indicator of ADHD in adults, but
that's tough for another day.
I just got this couch yesterday, by the way, and I've only been in here since October. So great minds. It's funny because it's true, Holly. It's funny because it's true.
It is.
But what are some other things that you do to change up like your workflow? Like, do you find that even like changing your style is something that you do?
Not particularly, no. Like, well, my style of editing, I mean, there's going to be small minor changes that if you look at an image I made a year ago, it's going to look different than something I did yesterday. But it's not like a conscious change of, I'm going to be more cool toned, and then instead I'm going to be more like warm toned. It's just little tiny itty bitty changes that I might find a new technique that I prefer over something else. I might get a little less heavy handed in one area and just find that I like that a little bit more, but it's not like a conscious style change.
Right. I would agree with that. And like one thing I've noticed in the last few months now, that I'm reviewing a lot of the instructors' tutorials that come into our membership here at Samarana, is that I think it's so interesting that we all do things. Our workflows are all so similar, but so different at the same time, which is just like mind blowing that we can work like almost identical process, but we might use the same exact tool a different way. And like that is so fun for me to see that. And I'm like, oh, wow, I do that too. But then I'm like, oh, wait, curveball. That's not how I use it. And I would agree that sometimes those little tiny changes in how you use the tools, even in Photoshop, can be a huge difference. Miranda just commented also that go shopping in your own home. Right. And it's so true. And that sometimes you're amazed what you have tucked away. And for me, it's in my studio. But yes, it's so true. I am a studio hoarder. So sometimes I find gems that I have not seen in years that might reignite a spark that, like Holly, you were saying that too, that sometimes you'll think about something and then years later is when it comes into fruition. Yeah. Can you give us an example of something like that?
Yeah, so
like you've done?
This really ties into my love of history and women throughout history. I wanted to do a project that highlights, well, let's talk about women in history to begin with, right? You were really only ever recorded if you were a woman of high status or you were like really effing notorious.
Yeah.
So, the everyday woman, unfortunately, is not recorded throughout history, which I think is a shame. But I really kind of want to focus on the women that were deemed notorious because they were more than likely just women ahead of their time. They were women with opinions. They were strong. They were strong-willed. And that just went against like the societal grain of the day. And they were deemed witches or whatever.
You read my mind. I was thinking that in my head. I'm like, if you challenge them that they should bleed you to death, then you are a witch. Like, what do you know, silly lady?
Yeah. And I just wanted to sort of do something with photography to honor those women, because I'm a huge proponent of, whatever, call me a feminist. I know like it's such a dirty word to some people, but like in actuality, it is really just making sure everything is equal and fair and people are treated with respect. So it's to be able to give an homage and give some honor to those women that were treated so unfairly and so unjustly because they were basically used as tools for men. So, I have a running list of women that I wanted to commemorate, if you will. And I have one portrait done and working on a few others. Actually, if I turn this, there's the first one. There she
Oh,
is.
Holly, that's beautiful.
Yes. So that is Lucrezia Borgia.
I actually love Lucrezia Borgia. Especially you probably have seen the stars.
Of
The
course.
stars, yeah. I was like so mad that they didn't bring that back. I get like angry. I'm like, how dare you? It was so good. But truthfully, I was like so mad. I'm so sorry. I turned angry. I'm like, see, I'm so angry that I turned something on mistakenly, guys. But truthfully, I've already turn it on. It won't turn on now. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. See, I was like death gripping my tablet because I was so angry about it. But no, I think that that's incredible, though, that you take the inspiration and really create a timeless piece of work out of that, and especially things that are like so close to your heart, if you will. Like even though it's weird that like you'll read some of these women's stories and you don't know them, they were born hundreds of years before you. But I think that maybe in some ways, when we relate to these historical figures, it really can make the portrait so much more important to us when we're creating the entire session.
100%. 100%. So yeah. I have the wardrobe for my next one. I just need to find my right model for it.
It's half the fun, right? The model search.
Right. Should I go get the gown?
Do it. Please do. I'm like you. I heard gown. I'm like, yeah. So
it's coming.
We would love to hear too that when you are styling your session, what do you think is like the most important thing to focus on when you're styling your session? Oh yeah, that is pretty fantastic.
Yep. This is Anne Boleyn, guys.
Mm-hmm.
She is.
That is, yes, it's like perfect too. Like you nailed that end of the 14th, beginning of the 15th century look. Like that is spot on to their wardrobe.
It was actually created as authentically as possible to historical patterns.
Did you have that custom made, or were you lucky enough to find that gem?
I was actually lucky enough to find it. The issue with the construction on it, just fun tip. It's the deviance from being as like completely authentic as it should be. Is down to that dress is so heavy, and a lot of the weight is supposed to be resting on hips for the skirt. Little girls don't have hips, so they had to make some modifications to have all of the weight on the shoulders.
Mm-hmm. That brought up a subject to me that we both can relate to. So out of curiosity, Holly, and this is a little off topic, how do you handle it when you are doing these really intricate and well thought out sessions? When I noticed that like with some of my gowns too, for the little girls, that they get very sensitive to the weight of the material on them. And have you ever had that happen? And how do you handle that when you are in a very styled session? So the wardrobe's not very negotiable. And how do you handle that to get the session done?
That's really the only dress that I have that is heavy. So
you do, yeah. Most I would say most of your other dresses are like cotton based or linen.
Well, most of the work the wardrobe I have is like cotton vintage. So I don't really do the big poofy designer luxurious $1,000 gowns. I don't.
Right.
That's not me. So I don't really have that experience to share, unfortunately.
I have run into it. Obviously, mine sometimes they're heavy. Like even tulle, believe it or not, can be very heavy when you have that much of it on a gown. And I have run into it where the littles are just kind of uncomfortable in it. And I feel like all I can do is make micro adjustments in the moment or just reassure them that it's going to be really quick. The quicker you cooperate, the quicker you're out of the dress. So that's that's the best thing I can advise, is just kind of get through the session as quick as possible while getting what you need to get. And how long do your sessions for these very styled sessions last for you, Holly?
Hair and makeup takes longer than the shooting actually does.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I can get all of my shooting done in 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I think really genuinely that probably some of my very, very best work came from like the shortest sessions. And another thing I've noticed, have you noticed this as well, that when you're working on a passion project, because oftentimes when I do these, I'm not concerned about like the income I'm going to generate from the one session that I have envisioned. It's more about like me. It's therapeutic for me. I want to get this done. Not to say I might not do sessions with it later, but my one, I have a whole vision for it. I just love those so much. And I feel like the pressure is not on me to make any certain type of portrait other than what completely is my idea for it. And I think that those always come out like the most glorious of any session that I do, when it's actually just like a fun passion project for me.
Well, interestingly enough, I don't really take, let's call them like commissions from clients.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody comes to me and says, this is what I want, XYZ. And I take it and I'm like, this is so not me, but I'm going to do it anyway. My clients come to me knowing what I do and they say, do your thing.
Yeah. Trust that. And I love that. I love hearing that your clients just like full-heartedly trust you. My favorite clients are like that.
Yeah. And if they don't, then we're not a fit.
Right.
Because I am not going, because if people don't know, I actually have a full-time job outside of photography.
Mm-hmm.
I got into photography because I love it. And I found a way to do it as a side hustle. So this is my time off from my regular job. And if I'm going to be spending my downtime doing this, I want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be stressing and pulling my hair out, that's the door. Not doing it, you know? So
Right.
I understand that that's a luxury some people don't have, but I think it is a goal to work towards as well.
Yeah, I can relate to that too, because I oftentimes think like if money was like no object and I didn't depend on my income, I think that I would enjoy making my portraits 20 times more than I do now, because it is always in the back of my mind that there is a purpose of why I'm here and doing this other than just having fun. And I do think that when I also worked a different job and didn't just do photography full time, I think I loved doing photography more and just creating these images and styling. All of it was just fun. It was just all purely passion for me. And now that I'm trying to get back there, as I mentioned, I'm trying to get back to that feeling, because like I don't want to lose that, because that is like the best feeling in the world, to create a piece of art that has like literally come from the center of your heart and soul. Like it's so good. You're giving a piece of yourself to every single portrait that way. Yeah. So that is like a huge thing.
Yeah, and it's not to say that, you know, the clients don't have any say. You know, I work with them to lend my expertise in how I see things. So actually, this might be a good way to segue into my newest tutorial.
It's like one of my favorites you've done, though, because it's just so stinking cute. Not only is it just like amazingly well crafted and done, but it's just like the image that it's based on too is just like, it really is just like Grandpa.
Yeah, so the tutorial is called Just Like Grandpa. And this was client work. I had mom come to me saying she wanted pictures of all of her kids. And one of the things that she wanted to create, guys, I am IPS. I do finished artwork, as you can see from behind me. She wanted a piece for her husband's office. And initially, she wanted it of the three kids together. But then, you know, she did want something of her son that was representative of the different generations on her husband's side of the family. So she came in for her consultation and we just talked. And I told her, you know, think of different heirlooms that you have, things that you would want to incorporate, what is meaningful to your family. And they give me this piecemeal, and I'm able to put that story together for them visually into a photograph. So that's the finding the inspiration with your clients, is getting to know them.
Yeah.
That's finding inspiration with your clients.
And it is guiding them too, because sometimes maybe some of the stuff they want to use isn't going to match the theme as well, and they can't envision it the same way that you can. So I think that's also important to remember, that they are hiring you to do this part of it. Like, they're coming to you because of the magic that you create and what they've seen in your portfolio. So don't be afraid to kind of be a little assertive and direct them, because, like, honestly, that's what they want. That's why they're coming to you. So, Holly, I'm going to switch really quick because, like, we have other questions. I'm sorry, tonight our usually all of our comments are coming into one platform. They are not tonight. So I am going to go back and read some of the questions that we have overlooked. Heine, yes, we're not kidding. It is therapeutic. So just have to say that. Hello, Olguta, Victoria, Hannah, Monica. All of our friends are here with us. So Victoria had a really great question. What is, like, the weirdest thing that has sparked inspiration for you? I'm excited to hear this one, actually. That's a great question.
I would probably say drag queens.
Yeah. You're like, easy, drag queens. But is it that weird though? Honestly, like, is it? Because it really does fit the era that you focus on.
The way that I'm sitting there on a Friday night watching Drag Race, and I do children's portraiture. So
Okay. When you put it like that.
Yeah.
It's really funny though when you do put it like that. Okay.
I'm not making little baby drag queens. I just love the wigs.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and clarify that part. No, the wig, and it is so fun. Like, I love that you do create little things that become something that you're known to do. And that is really cool when somebody can be scrolling through Instagram and immediately stop and be like, oh, that's Holly Lund's work, without even looking at who posted it. That's powerful. And that says a lot in itself. That to me is such a compliment. When anyone says that to me personally, I'm always like, oh, like, we are our own worst critics. So, like, I hope you do know that, Holly, that, like, you have such a distinguished look to your work that it's recognizable.
Every time somebody says that to me. So, like, I appreciate anytime somebody says that.
I know what you mean. But it's good to stay humble, right? Let's see. Hannah said that she knows somebody that only shoots queens, and that it's a lot of fun, and they're so bright, and they're bright and bold images. So I'm sure that'd be a lot of fun, actually. Just having been to one of the shows, even, they just seem like so happy and fun to be around. I can't even imagine, like, doing a shoot, like, because I bet it's like bananas over the top great. Like,
if somebody can hook me up with Alyssa Edwards, let me know. Okay. Alyssa Edwards, Shangela, let's talk.
Send them over to Holly over here. I'll give you her details in the comments. Please send them on over, guys. No, that's a fun question though, because it is really interesting to think about what things spark. I'm trying to think what would be, like, the weirdest thing that has ever sparked interest. I was laughing really hard though, because we could talk about how people interpret our work too, because what it says to me might not be what it says to you or somebody else. And I had that happen today, and I was, like, literally dying laughing so hard. I've envisioned this, like, very, like, classy vintage Hollywood, like, go with the set that I created, like, this portrait of myself that I've wanted to do for months now, since I've been planning this. I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand like this, and this is the prop I'm going to be holding. And then, like, I had, like, a whole vision of what it was going to look like. And then one person in the comments told me that it reminded them of the movie Annie, and it was like the mean woman who ran the orphanage. And now I can't stop seeing that when I look at my own self-portrait. Now I'm like, oh my God, it does look like that. So it's really funny just how, like, when we're inspired and we see one thing, it can create a totally different mindset for somebody else. And that's, like, I love that about art though. And I think that is a lot of fun to just see how people interpret your work.
100%.
Absolutely. I'm going to switch back. I have to switch between platforms. So, Holly, tell us, do you have anything else fun that you're working on soon or in the process of right now?
I have a couple of dresses I want to shoot that inspired a vibe. They're not necessarily tied to a specific piece of inspiration. Found a dress. I wanted to change up the way it looks. It's a very sweet, bright, colorful, springy dress. And I said, let's rock star this thing out. I like to make things edgy and do what's probably unexpected a lot of the time too. So kind of flipping something on its head can, kind of pull you out of a rut too. So instead of making it soft and beautiful and I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm adding a black choker to this. I'm adding a black belt, and we're going to do black combat boots. So
I do like when people take these things and going back to pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, especially if it's not something that you're used to doing. That could be a lot of fun to like challenge yourself. I think it's important that we do continue to challenge ourselves too.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to like inspiration with styling too, I think a lot of people can get hung up on, okay, well, I got a dress and I got a headpiece, and it's very straightforward. It's beautiful, but there's something missing from it. There's, somebody else can shoot just that, and there's really no differentiation between the two.
Right.
And I think it's, study fashion a little bit. Study fashion throughout history. Watch runway shows. Look up haute couture. Just seeing how adding or taking away some things can just make it your own.
You reminded me, and don't quote me, but I believe it was Sophia Loren that always said that before you leave, always take one thing back off. Was it not? No?
Coco Chanel.
Coco Chanel. Thank you. I was wrong. But I'm glad you knew what I was talking about. But it is interesting to think about that, like how these influencers will give you like one little mindset of something you could think about. Maybe you need to put something on. Maybe you need to take something off. Sometimes less is more. It really depends on what you're doing. And you made me think too that one thing that can be very useful if you are in a rut, consider going to styled shootouts. Not only are you having the opportunity to shoot something that you didn't have to do any of the work on, that in itself can be fantastic, not having to put together the shoot, but you're going and you're working with other artists. Maybe not only you're going to take away a fun day of shooting and new images for your portfolio, you're going to be networking yourself. You're going to meet other artists that can make other opportunities. Perhaps you're going to learn something from somebody else, because as we're saying, like we all work so similar, but we might be doing little micro things differently that make a huge difference in your workflow, and that you'll learn new stuff. Even it doesn't matter how experienced you are, how far you are in your career, or how new you are in your career, no matter the level, I think that exploring those styled shootouts or workshops, I think that they could be so impactful to you and continued growth, especially because this is like a silly little thing I think all the time, but I'm like, the minute you think you don't have anything left to learn, you're plateaued. Like,
yep, you're done.
That's how I feel about it. Like, you're just going to keep coasting then. And maybe that's good enough for you. But for me, I always want to be able to look back 12 months ago and say, wow, I can see my growth in the last year. And to me, that makes it worthwhile and makes me know all the hours I've spent doing everything is worth it.
If you reach the finish line, you did it wrong.
Yeah, keep reaching.
Somebody I really admire is Michelle Celentano. She is a Canon Explorer of Light. If you were back in the heyday of Clubhouse, she was on there quite frequently. She taught us about the MTHFR gene. But she always takes other photographers' workshops constantly. I know she just got into dance photography, so she was doing a dance photography workshop. And, somebody who's been in the business for 20, 25 years is a recognized industry leader, is still pushing herself. So if you think that there's no need to anymore, do it.
Think again. Yeah. I think that is true. I had a moment just yesterday, I had just did a workshop yesterday. And I remember when one of the photographers that registered, I was like, why are you coming to my workshop? I should be coming to your workshop. And that was like a really funny moment for me that I was almost like a little intimidated. Like, why is he coming to my workshop? I should really be asking him to mentor me because he's so fantastic. So that I think that's proof in itself what Holly's saying, that it is important to keep pushing yourself and don't think that you can't learn from somebody else, no matter your skill level, because like that's what everything is about, especially in art. Like there's always a new way to art.
And I think, also it just sort of gives you that reinvigoration for inspiration too.
Yeah. I think like all of those are such excellent ways to really find inspiration, just like anything that you could do. I know I'm one of those people too that like when I'm driving down a road, it's probably like painful being in the car with me. I'm like, oh, look at that old building, and anyone else is gonna look at it and be like, that looks like dilapidated and dangerous. And I'm like, doesn't it? Like, like that's like exciting for us, but it's very similar. I thought about this. Somebody posted in a group, and this is me going into like saying like I find inspiration everywhere around me constantly. And I am a fan of Pinterest. I never use Pinterest in the expectation of copying somebody's ideas, but I absolutely find inspiration there. And I just have folder upon folder like, oh, eventually this is what I'm going to do. And let's talk about like manifesting for a second, because I think that there's something to be said about it. In my experience, anyways, I had a folder in my Pinterest account called Big Studio. And I started putting stuff in there for when I had a big studio. Well, guess what, guys? Last year I got a big studio, and now I'm building.
A big studio. No, it's a real big studio. It's not a quote big studio. It's freaking huge.
It's a large space. I'm very lucky. I have a storefront that then in the back I have a 2,000 square foot studio warehouse. So it's big enough to build sets. We'll say that. And my purpose of bringing this up though is that like this is something that I'm like, I want to do this. Sometimes I think I love building sets more than I love shooting sets. Like that might be a thing. Is that like, can I just come around to everybody's studio and build stuff for you? Because like that's my favorite part. I really, really love the challenge of building sets. It's most of the fun for me. Painting stuff, finding stuff on Marketplace, whatever it is, the whole thing is an experience, and it makes my soul so happy, and I just love doing it. And I think that writing your goals down, or even just like making a Pinterest board like I do, more or less that's what I do, is that things that I see that spark ideas, I put them in a board and I name my board something, but it worked for me. And then I was able to bring it into reality. And now it's so fun actually going in there and going, okay, now I get to do this project because I have the space. And I'm actually doing that right now. I'm working on one of the very first things that I pinned in that board. I've started on already. So if you go to my Instagram, you can see a time lapse and you can start guessing what I'm doing, guys. So at Jillian Fine Art on Instagram. Give me a follow. Then go follow Holly this way. There she is. Yes. Let me check for some more questions. I have to keep switching back. Hello, Abigail. Hope you're doing good. I'm going to switch back to the other one. I'm sorry about this, guys. Next week, we will have this trouble. We'll have to troubleshoot it and figure out why it's not showing us the comments here tonight. Let me switch back and see if we missed any more questions. I want to make sure that we are getting to all of them.
Ready? This just came too.
Ooh, you got something new?
Unpacking. I haven't even taken it out yet. This is one thing I don't have in my arsenal yet.
Maria, we love you too. We're getting our egos. Ooh, you vixen. Put it on, Holly.
If I must. Don't you miss my bangs?
Yes. Mine are still growing out.
So this will also be going with my very dainty pink, but black shoot.
I like it. I'll show you guys, since we're sharing stuff, I'll show you some of like the new stuff that I got for an upcoming maternity shoot that I'm so excited for.
Dun, 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 dun. What will she show? I feel like you're gonna have to like pull back the curtain. It's like
I could pull back the curtains. Surprise! I'll come back around though.
We're a little ridiculous if you didn't know. Ooh.
Right. This is what when you started showing me the headpieces, you were like, I was like, yep. Go ahead and start one for me because that is definitely the road I'm traveling this year. I already have the vibes. So I am so excited. Kind of what Holly was talking about is that we all have access to the same designers, mostly. Certain designers like So Trendy. I absolutely love what she does. Valerie has it set up where you could have an exclusive box quarterly. And I think that that's fantastic because that's giving me access to gowns that not every other maternity photographer is going to have. You have to be on a subscription and it's first come, first serve. So if they sell out, like you snooze, you lose. And I appreciate that. But with that said, just like Holly said, anybody can shoot the dress. What are you going to do with this dress to make it different? What is your plans to set yourself aside using this other piece of art? Because fashion design is art in itself. So how are you going to make it interesting? How are you going to make it unique? When, I don't know, I'm making up a number. I don't know how many gowns a designer would run exclusively for each image or item, but let's say that let's make 1,000 of them. How are you going to make yourself different from the 999 other photographers that own that same gown as you? So that's where I feel like I personally, especially now that I've started shooting studio more rather than just outdoor photography, I want my work to stand out and I want it to be Instagram scroll stopping. So that's where I've started to try to develop a new style of my own that is going to be different and it's going to stand out. And I don't see I see the beautiful big sun hats and the boho brim hats, but I don't see people using a lot of headpieces in maternity. So that's what kind of got me started on that. And now I can't help myself, and Holly is enabling my addiction. So
sorry, not sorry.
sorry, not sorry. So, and then just like unique little pieces too. Like I found a cute little fan. So I have like a whole idea. I can't spill the beans. Can't spill the beans completely, but it's going to be good and it's going to be really fun, guys.
I can't wait to see. But for those who are like, oh, well, I can't come up with an idea. How do I stand out? You don't think like you have to think of something outlandish. You just have to make it you.
Yeah.
Because there's no other you. So it's drawing from your interests, your experiences. What I like to tell people is make a list of the first 5 things that you can think of that inspire you. And, for a lot of our circle, the first thing that a lot of the women will say is their kids. Their kids inspire them.
Yeah.
So that's a go-to. Obviously, that's probably going to be number 1 for a lot of people. But then it's just rattle it off. Don't think about it too hard. What are these 5 things that inspire your photography? And then I want you to have a separate list of 5 different things that you just add to as it comes to you. So like how the wig thing came to me. I was literally just sitting on my couch, probably eating potato chips. Being like, yes, honey, watching RuPaul's Drag Race, loving their wigs. I'm like, oh, wigs are cool. Okay, I'm inspired by wigs. So just kind of thinking about that thought process. Don't overthink it. As it comes to you, write it down. And then something really fun to do is to take something from list 1, something from list 2, and combine them. And that is a shoot.
That's a really great idea, actually, because again, going back to pushing yourself outside of the box, you're then having to be creative on how you will do it. I actually had a client come in recently that did something like that to me, and I was like, And I'm not gonna lie, I thought about turning down the session. I thought about being like, it's just not my style. But then I'm like, that's really close minded because this is an opportunity to push myself outside my box and outside my comfort zone and do something new and different than my everyday maternity session. They are like those crazy, crazy shoe collectors. Like, they collect sneakers. Like, they don't mess around. They have like special bags to transport them and everything. And when they brought those in, I was like, oh, urban, like, why'd you hire me? Like, I am not an urban photographer. My work does not scream urban anywhere. But we then found a dress that matched the specific pair of sneakers that they loved and were sentimental for some reason to them. But I just happened to have a dress that was like the perfect tone of yellow to match these shoes. And we made it work, and I did the session, and it was okay. And I'm so glad because they ended up being like fantastic clients. I was like, man, if I would have like turned them away, like I would have missed the whole experience and the process that I learned. I would not have gained any of that experience or knowledge and wouldn't have pushed myself. That goes into like even client closets. I don't know about you, Holly, but like I have like colors I gravitate to, right? Like I have a hard time varying from those. But I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, I have 12 dresses in this very similar tone. Buy a different color, Jillian. Like stop doing that.
I have a funny story for this. So, for those of you who are familiar with Stella Maris tutus, Melissa posted, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago that she was doing like a remnant sale. So she had like leftover fabric and she had enough to make X number of dresses. And she put up this one cream, very vintage looking type of fabric. And I was like, I need this. Like, I need a hole in the head because she has made me probably like 4 cream long vintage type dresses. And yeah, I have so much cream.
I'll be right
So
back.
much cream. But kind of going back to like drawing from different lists and whatnot, I have an image that pulled from 3 of my lists. Obviously, I have the history that I love, the wigs that we've talked about, and then we haven't really dived into it here, but my dolls. And that resulted in this right here. So she's wearing, I love you and your wings. I think you'll get mine.
Hi, Melissa.
But she's wearing a very Edwardian type dress. And this is very sentimental because the locket that she has around her neck has an image of her grandfather in it who just passed. And there on the front of the locket is a dragonfly. That was very meaningful for them. And then we threw in the wig and I turned her into a doll. And
That is such a beautiful image too.
It ended
That's
up
so
on the cover of the
interesting,
magazine.
right? Like, and that's wonderful too, because that goes back to what you spoke about of really working with your clients. And it's not just about your vision, it's about being inclusive into their vision and just collaborating with them, which is so fantastic that you were able to do that and create like such like a piece of work, like artwork though. And that's what's so amazing about what you do, Holly. And I do love that like you get to pick and choose your clients like you do and take things only if you want them, because it shows in your work like tenfold. It really does. It's not just your standard smash cake photo. Not that those aren't beautiful and wonderful in themselves, but like yours are timeless. They're timeless pieces. And like that is so wonderful and inspirational to everybody. And I think that that's like, you're talking about industry leaders, but I would say that you are an industry leader and that people look up to you. I've had people speak about you to me before, and I'm like, yeah, Holly's my friend. Like, and I feel like honored to be able to say Holly Lund is one of my good friends. Like, so I think that I think everybody should listen to what you're saying about finding this inspiration and these little tips that you're giving. Not just because it's Talk Tuesday and this is what we're here for, but because there's something to be said about your passion and your work and what it has evolved into.
Yeah, you stand out for being an artist, and you become an artist because you dive into you. Because there's only one you.
That's all right. So guys, we have time for one last question. If anyone has anything, and I'm sorry, I'm going to jump back and forth again really quick to see your questions. I apologize. We are having some technical difficulties with our streaming this evening. So if you did ask a question and we missed it, I'm so sorry. We will try to catch up in the comments afterwards. If we did miss them, we'll try to reply to them. And hopefully next week we will not have this issue. So this is your last opportunity. Ask us your questions. Just going to go ahead and give a shout out since we brought up our lovely friend Melissa with Stella Maurice. I do want to show you these fantastic wings that she makes because these are so fantastic. I really mean it. And I just want to take a second to show you guys. If we're talking about inspiration, I wanted these wings. And let's talk about manifesting again. When I finally went to buy these wings, I opened up my messages, and when I clicked to message Melissa, I had totally forgot that 18 months before that, I had messaged her about these wings. And I thought to myself at the time, I can't afford these. I can't afford these wings. But in 18 months' time, I came back and I'm like, send me the invoice. Done deal. And I mean it though. Like, write your stuff down. Write down your goals and what you want to do, because if you keep working at it, it's going to happen. This is my experience time after time. But I want to show you my favorite part about these is that they do have the elastic straps. I've seen a lot of different designers' wings, and these are hands down my favorite. Hands down my favorite, because not only do they have the elastic, but they also have this little bar here that you can actually just tuck down into the back of a shirt like I had it just now, or a dress. And then anybody who knows anything about having to edit out anything, you don't want to have to do it. And that's what's so fantastic about these. Thank you. God bless you, you angel, Melissa.
So, okay, yours are yours the adult wings?
No, mine are actually the child size, but I have
Mine
moms
are the
wear
baby
these all the time.
wings. Mine are the
I do
toddler
need
ones.
baby wings. I want babies.
And we're just gonna keep plugging you, Melissa. Melissa.
We only like Melissa a little bit.
Melissa was taught to make wings by the person that does the Victoria's Secret wings, so they're legit. And
workshops.
And she's doing a workshop. She's
Yes.
teaching you how to make them. So if you're not in the Stella Maurice group, you should probably go join them.
Should probably go get in the group, because and just going back to like really connecting with other artists. Like, I love developing friendships with the designers that I like purchasing from, because of the fact that like we are artists. And I know that like there's times I will like send Melissa like crazy ideas. She's like, let's put a pin in that. Come back. I can't even blame her either. But it's just like so fun to be able to have a connection with somebody else that can create a different medium of art, because every single piece that our designer friends make are absolutely art. Like, it makes so much sense that like the Victoria's Secret's wing creator is the one who taught Melissa, because it absolutely shows in her wings, and they're so much fun to work with, and they pay for themselves. In my experience, my sessions, first weekend I own them, they pay for themselves. So they're, don't be afraid to reinvest in your own business. That's how my philosophy. I'm not afraid to spend money to create awesome sessions, like just smartly, of course. Like yes, within reason. I'm not telling you how to spend this is not an accounting, any type of accounting advice.
Don't get me wrong, I love spending other people's money, so.
Ask my husband. No, just kidding. I spend my own money. That was a joke. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure if I am seeing the comments, guys, so I'm very sorry if I missed your comments. Again, we will try to readdress them in the comments if we are overlooked here tonight. But Holly, is there anything else that you would like to share about finding inspiration? I think this has been probably so far my favorite Talk Tuesday. It's been so much fun. It's always fun with you.
Thanks. I'm just gonna, double down and don't overthink it. Things will come to you. Sometimes it will take 2 years. Trust me, I know.
Put it on your Pinterest board.
Put it on your Pinterest board, manifest it, wait for the timing to be right. Things will fall into place. And, pushing yourself should be like the right amount of scary. You know, it shouldn't be scary where, you know, you completely and utterly avoid it. But like, if it feels uncomfortable, then you're probably doing it right.
It's true. Growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally growing pains. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's true. I do think so. I think that's I can only feed off of that. That in my career, every single time that I've been a little bit nervous to make a move, I've done it. It has been the right decision to make. So use your tools wisely and really think about everything thoroughly before you make those big decisions, especially some purchases can be expensive, but they can also really result in amazing sessions, building your portfolio out, and then you have awesome pieces like these wings in your client collection, which is just another reason for people to book with you. So it's good. Holly, thank you so much for being our guest tonight, and I hope to have you back on soon. We can discuss some more fun topics. To all of our viewers, thank you for joining us as well. If you do have any topics that you would like us to discuss on Talk Tuesday, please give me a comment below. Let us know what you want to hear about, or if there's anyone specifically, any of our other Samarana instructors that you would like to hear about, or hear from, I should say. We'd love to hear what you guys want to learn about and be inspired about. So that's all for tonight. Thank you guys again for joining us, and talk to you soon. See you next week.